It's been a bit cold, wet and miserable here in Adelaide, and I've been meaning to get in the garden for quite a while now. The weather's looking up, it's a nice sunny day today. Still freezing cold though, and today we're using my new toy, which is the big green egg. Now what we're doing today is a cowboy butter salmon. This is an incredibly easy recipe and it just melts apart. The flavor is incredible and we're using the big green egg to be able to create that indirect heat, and I'll show you how to set up that in a second. Cowboy butter is super simple as well. It's just a smoky paprika butter, a little bit of herbs and spices here and there, and a little bit of chili if you wanted to add it. We can also finish this off with a little bit of hot honey as well for that additional touch.
What we do need to do is fill our egg up with our charcoal. I'm using lump charcoal for this, which is actually from the big green egg. And we're also using some fire lighters. These are just quick speed lighters that I'm going to place 3 in, mainly in the center of that coal. And then I'm going to use the igniter and just blast this, get these nice and hot. And I know everyone has a different way to light up coal, so you always do what's easier for you. When you do have it lit, I recommend moving the coals around slightly, get them closer to that heat source, but try not to cover them completely.
Now once the fire is lit a little bit in the top there, what we're going to do is just open the vent. On this it just has like a little mesh seal right here. It's just pretty much going to be a safety guard just so nothing can fly in or out. And for this, we want to open this the whole way. That's going to let as much oxygen in there because fire needs oxygen to breathe. And we also want to open the regulator that's at the top the whole way. This is just going to allow as much oxygen in there, get this fire really blazing. So now that that's all lit, we're going to leave the lid and the vent open for about 10 to 12 minutes. Just let this get nice and hot, let those coals burn. And in the meantime, we can prepare everything else. And we're going to start with that cowboy butter.
For the butter, I'm using 250 grams or 8.8 ounces of unsalted butter that's been softened. I know that does seem like a lot, which it is, and you can definitely tone it down if you wanted to. To that, we're going to add in 2 teaspoons or 6 grams of onion powder, 2 teaspoons or 6 grams of garlic powder. That's for a nice concentrated flavor of both. 2 teaspoons or 6 grams of smoked paprika for that nice color as well as that smoky hint. 2 teaspoons or 6 grams of dried Italian herbs. You're more than welcome to add fresh herbs. It's just a mixture of oregano, basil, bit of thyme. And we're also going to add in about half a teaspoon of ground chili powder, and you can use chili flakes if you wanted to. Also, hit it up with a little bit of salt and cracked black pepper. 10 cracks worth. Here I have 5 grams or 0.2 ounces of flat leaf parsley. Scrunch this up, it will make it a lot easier to cut. And give it a rough chop. Just make sure there's no large leaves or stems, and we can place this into the bowl with all of the remaining ingredients. And I know this is different to some cowboy butters you may see. I've just changed it up a little bit, but you're more than welcome to add mustard, fresh herbs, a little lemon juice. There's plenty of recipes out there for different styles. And give this a quick mix through, make sure everything's combined. Then we can rub 2/3 of that butter all over the salmon. The salmon that I'm using has been pin boned, it's got the skin on, and it weighs 750 grams or 1.6 pounds. Depending on how you like your salmon, you can remove the skin, and you don't have to have one big slab like what I have here. You can just slice it into fillets and have it as single portions. I also ended up swapping from the basting brush to my hands. It's so much easier to do, but of course it's a little bit more messy. Add about 1 tablespoon of olive oil or vegetable oil to a cast iron pan. Make sure that cast iron pan's seasoned so nothing sticks. Slide in the salmon. We don't have to heat the pan up or anything, and we're also going to add the remaining butter into a separate pan, and we're going to melt this and then pour this over at the end. Now that the big green egg is nice and hot, I'm going to use the convector, and this is going to allow us to do indirect cooking, so it's going to raise the surface and not have those flames completely underneath our pan. Place on the grill plate so we have that nice smooth surface. Shut the lid, and then we can start controlling the temperature with the regulator on the top. We want this opened by a couple of centimeters, and we're also going to do the same with the vent at the bottom. Leave this open by about 2 inches. The temperature that we're looking for is 150 degrees Celsius or 300 degrees Fahrenheit. As you can see, the needles are slightly above that. We can just adjust the temperature with the regulator and the vent, closing them ever so slightly. This will bring the temp down a little bit.
One thing I will quickly mention is that this needle is staying exactly in the same spot now. It's just above 300 or 150 degrees Celsius, which means that it's maintaining its heat really well. We've adjusted the regulator and the vent down there. What this is going to do is compensate for when we open this up, air's going to escape out as well as the heat, obviously. And then that means that when we put this back in, or the salmon back in, that this is going to control its temp, and it's at the optimal temperature right now.
With that said, slightly burp the door of the green egg. This is just going to allow any built up air to escape. Cook the salmon for about 20 to 25 minutes or an internal temperature of 52 degrees Celsius or 125 degrees Fahrenheit, and just maintain that 150 to 300 heat.
One other thing that I will quickly mention, if you do find that the temperature does drop quite a bit, just open up the regulator, the vent a little bit, just maintain that temperature the whole way. And if this does seem a little bit complicated, it's no different to cooking on a barbecue when you lower the temperature and heighten the temperature. Instead of doing it with knobs, you're doing it with the regulator and that vent. It's really simple, doesn't have to be too complicated at all.
This has now been about 22.5 minutes. The internal temperature is 52 degrees Celsius, which is optimal for about medium rare on this salmon. You can cook it for longer if you like it more cooked. Remove it, then place that butter in there in that saucepan. Squeeze in a little bit of regular honey or hot honey. Close the door and allow this to melt. Once it's melted, you have this beautiful, rich butter. So much flavor, it smells incredible, and it's absolutely delicious on the salmon. I recommend serving this in the cast iron pan if you're using a whole fillet. If you have individual portions, you can serve them up how you choose. Pour over that delicious butter. It changes the color, the flavor, everything about it looks absolutely incredible. Salmon just falls apart. It's so soft and juicy, and you can serve this with whatever you want.
And with everything said and done, there is only one thing left to do, and that is, of course, we can then dig in. There is so much flavor going on that fish. It's juicy, it's moist, melts like butter, literally, even though there is a lot of butter in this recipe. The flavor of that is absolutely insane. Definitely do make this recipe, and I really appreciate you watching the video. Thank you so much. Also, just before we end it, once you're done with the big green egg, just shut the lid, close the vent and the regulator, and the coals will start to cool down.